If you enjoy this video, consider supporting us on Patreon for just $5 a month. Click on the card in the upper right-hand corner for more information. Hey guys, this is Julian of Julian Gray Media. As you can see, this is a new camera. Lots of new things in this video. Today's video, we're going to dive inside of the project of my latest release, Labrats. This is a really special one for me because it's a track that I started about a year and a half ago. A little bit of backstory on this one. Me and a few other friends, other artists that you know today, found each other over on Facebook. I would say 2 to 3 years ago when we created this group chat, and we kind of branded it like Labrats, and that was like our collective, if you will. And I wrote this song as like a theme song or something similar to that for the collective. And the collective never really panned out. We still have the group chat and we talk every day in it, but that idea eventually evolved into what is Gradient Arts today, which is Gradient Collective, my brand new arts collective. And if you haven't seen all of the exciting stuff happening with Gradient, and you've been wondering where I've been on YouTube, a lot of my effort has been going into this new project. So without a big rundown, you can check out the full trailer for Gradient in the upper right hand corner and check out our pilot compilation, our arts compilation, Colors Volume 1. Without a big rundown on that, essentially it's a multimedia arts creative platform for a bunch of different types of artists, musicians, poets, designers, essentially everything that I would be interested in compiled into one. I thought that the idea of a music collective or a music label was a little bit outdated, and everybody can do that now, so I wanted to do something a little bit different. So for my like release platform, like record labels kind of thing, I did something a little bit different, and it's supposed to capture a ton of different art. So Labrats, and the reason why I bring up Gradient is Labrats is the pilot release on Gradient. It's the first track we put out, and it's the first track of our first compilation, again, Volume 1, Colors Volume 1 on Gradient Collective now. So if you want to stream the song before we dive into this, you can click on the link in the upper right-hand corner right now, and you can do so. So that is some backstory on the track. I've had a lot of people give me great feedback on the track. I played this track out at Academy the other night to a sold-out crowd, and it went off. I was very proud because this is an older track of mine, and if the older stuff is doing well, then my new stuff has to be doing well. So without any further ado, I think we're going to jump into the project file and get started. Awesome, guys. So this is the project file for Labrats. Again, it's an older project of mine. There's a lot of things that I wouldn't have done the same way now that I did when I wrote this track. I wrote this track again at the end of like 2017. I think we'll just get started by listening to the intro part. Let's get started. So like a lot of my projects do, Labrats started with a melody. I was on my Ableton Push, and I was just kind of pressing random buttons. I forget what scale the song is in, but I was key locked to whatever key that was, minor, and I was just pressing random buttons, and I came up with that ding, ding, ding. And I knew that I had to build off of that, so I came up with a din 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 din. It's kind of got this really cool swung groove, similar to tracks like deadmau5's Slip. By the way, from now on, with these videos on tracks that I release myself or are on Gradient Collective, I'm going to put the project file up for free download to all of my patrons. And again, thank you for any of your pledges if you are a patron of the channel. I think I'm going to start putting a list of all the patrons at the end of each video. So this is the melody. Again, it's a pretty simple melody. And it's got this really nice swung feel. I think it's because it's hinting at a triplet grid. A dotted eighth note. Yeah, dotted eighth notes for these sections, followed by a full quarter note, I believe. Yeah, full quarter note, dotted eighth notes. The dotted eighths are creating that really swung feel, and that's what's making the song really interesting, at least in my opinion. Cool, so that is the main melody part. Again, it's dotted eighth notes followed by a full quarter note, and then back to the dotted eighth notes. And I've discussed this in other videos, But one of the things I really like to keep in mind when writing melodies is this idea of melodic symmetry. So if you have a pattern that you use in the first phrase, maybe try to reuse that in the second phrase. Now, it doesn't have to be the same notes. It's just referring to the same syncopation or rhythm. So we're doing dotted eighth, quarter, dotted eighth. And as you can see, the same exact rhythm, if we drag this over here, maybe we can put it on like a different scale. It doesn't really matter, or different notes of the scale right now. And as you can see, the notes are together. So these notes are the same length, these notes are the same length, these are the same length, these are the same length, these are the same length. And I do that throughout the entirety of the project file. So if I duplicate really quick, you can see that this rhythm is the same here and same here. And as you can see, every time the notes land on the same place. And I think that creating that rhythmic symmetry is creating this, I guess, hookiness to the melody, for lack of a better word. That helps the rhythm get stuck in the listener's head, and by proxy help the melody get stuck in your head. And that creates these really catchy melodies that I'm personally pretty known for, and I think that a lot of musicians are known for as well. If you analyze tracks like deadmau5's Slip, it's a very similar story. Very, very, synonymous, for lack of a better word, rhythms for each melodic phrase. And you get this really, really awesome catchy melody when you use that. Okay, so that is the main melody. So let's take a quick look at the sound design. Not too complicated here. We're just doing a saw wave with a square wave. Both of them have some unison on it. The square doesn't have any detune at all. The envelope is controlling the low pass cutoff of a low pass 12 Moog filter in Serum. We have a little bit of phaser on it as well. See, I have this audio effect rack here. This is kind of unique for me. I don't do a lot of this kind of processing in my music, but I think it turned out really nicely in this particular sound. So I had this melody. I was like, how can I make this more interesting without just plastering delay and reverb on it? So I used delay and reverb in moderation. I used it for certain notes to accentuate certain things, and it creates this really cool rhythm for certain parts of the melody. So we have as you can see here, there's a lot of automation going on. The audio effect rack has two macros I've applied. The delay is the dry wet of this delay, and the reverb is the reverb amount, I think, or maybe it's the mix of this reverb here. If I scroll through, you can see I have a few other things. My camera's, obscuring this part here, but it's nothing but a high EQ curve. And I think the coolest thing about this is the reverb and decay and delay automation. So you go, and that's going at a 1 beat delay, or whatever you call this in the built-in Ableton delay, at a ping pong and a fade mode. This is only for Ableton Live 10.1, or whenever they unified the delays. And the reverb, as you saw, is Valhalla Room. And occasionally I throw it into that space a little bit with the Valhalla Room, and then we do that right before the drop here. And it creates this really dynamic, moving feel to the melody that you don't get with just the stagnant MIDI. And there's a few other things going on here as well. We have this portamento automation for a few of the notes. It goes because you're drifting between the notes instead of just hitting them. So if you're not familiar, portamento adjusts the glide between several notes. That can be found here in Serum. And if you have a note playing and you have a second note playing, the amount of portamento is the amount of time it takes for the synth to catch between this note and drift between the two. If it says at absolutely 0, you'll go immediately when the next note starts, it'll switch pitches. If you adjust that portamento up, then you'll start to get a little bit of drift between those notes. So I use that here to create that little sliding effect. It's quite nice. And I do that in this part a little bit more, generously. Cool, so now you get the gist of the main melody. And as you can see, this project file is not that big. There's only like 40 tracks total, if that. The rest of this stuff is kind of smaller. So let's go ahead and just start from the top, I guess, and we'll work our way down. Typically, I like to put all my drums at the top anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and give this a go. So here's our kick, and this is Sonic Academy's Kick 2. I love Kick 2 for generating these really nice subtones for my kick drums. Sometimes I'll layer it with a kick sample, but in this case, I actually just use the kick synth itself as the only kick in the song. So I have this this nice curve here going from C to E to B to E, and you can see the amplitude here as well. I kind of shortened the default envelope a bit so it's a little bit more punchy and gets in and out very quickly. Creates a very nice kick, and I think this is actually only a slightly modified version of the default kick. Same click as the default, and I think it's just a sine wave, so it's not too far off from the default Kick 2 kick. So if you want to make a similar kick, you can just download Kick 2. Okay, so I have that, and then I have a reverse kick drum. Nothing special here. I just recorded the kick and I reversed it into itself. Creates this nice sweeping sub sound right before the kick, and you get this. Next up, we have a soft kick. I think I use this for the intro only. Yeah, and when you use like a soft kick like this, it can imply that motion or like that groove without giving away the bass. Okay, so next up we have a metal tap. Let's go ahead and give this a listen. And I have a lot of stuff going on this. This is a sample from one of my older packs called Seldom Sounds Railway. I'll link that in the description below. It's a metal tap, and what I do is I transpose it within the MIDI clip itself right here, as you can see. I use just the transpose knob on the sampler. In addition to that, I'm doing a very similar thing to what I did with the main lead. I'm using automated delay to create some interest every now and then. Then I have an auto pan going, so it's panning between the ears. You may hear that. Okay, and then I have this EQ curve here. Again, it's a little bit obscured by my camera, but the top end is literally just a curve down, or like that, like this, yeah. Cool, so we have metal, we have this noise channel here. This is just a white noise effect. And that's just a white noise that I froze. It's probably from one of the various soft synths I use, or maybe it's an analog synth white noise. I'm not really positive, I don't remember at this point. But it's a white noise sample with a high pass curve on it, a little bit of sidechain. And I'm sure you've seen, if you're watching this video, my video on sidechain compression. That's one of my biggest videos. So I encourage you to watch that if you don't know how compressors work. I have a reverb on this. Again, I'm automating some stuff. I have a filter, which is doing the sweeping. And I have a little bit of panning going on that guy too. There's also a sidechain at the very end of this. I'm sorry, the first one is this channel called noise gate. The second one is for the kick. The noise gate is referencing this channel here, which is just a blank MIDI note that's triggering the sidechain to create these really cool rhythmic noise effects like this. So you get this really like psh, 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 really cool. And go ahead and collapse that. And we'll listen to everything so far together. I don't think these are actually very, they aren't in the same place in the track, so you can't really listen to them together actually. We'll just go on for now. All right, so next up we have this evil laugh sound. I think this is a splice sample. And as you can see, if I disable the bit reduction, that's what it sounds like originally. but with some cool bit reduction, with some downsampling, it sounds like this. And I'm actually sending that to the laugh delay channel, which is a 3 delay default Ableton with 100% wet. It's essentially just a return channel for delay. Cool, so I have that. Then we have a counter melody. It's kind of hard to hear it in the original song, but it comes through when you really try to focus in on it. And it's creating this really nice groove because nothing lands on the 1, the 2, 3, or 4. It's landing on the ands and the E of this one. So we're getting this really nice syncopated rhythm. And I think that's adding to the groove of the song. When you put everything on the 1, 2, 3, and 4 in this house music genre, you get this really nice like grinding like bow, 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 but you lose a lot of the groove. So if you want to imply groove, you might go bow, bow, and that's kind of like what I'm doing here. I'm implying that and more than I am the quarter note. Cool. So there's a few more things. We have this ambient sound here. Really just used to fill the void. And I genuinely forget what I used for this. I'm pretty sure it was like one of the contact libraries that I have. Might be Kinetic Metal, not positive. Similar story for this. I believe it's a like a choir library that I froze with some reverb. Some pan on that. Here's our lead that we were talking about, and we have some percussion. This is a cool one. It's kind of like this choppy, chuggy mid-tone sound, and I think it works really well for achieving, you know, the feel I wanted here. It's a very nice, like, rhythmic and groovy sound. I have some auto pan on there. Make it go around you a bit. It's getting hard side chains, so it's really ducking under that kick and creating that groove. We have this as well, which is a build into sound. And you may recognize that from this track. I think that's a Leviathan sample that I reversed. A glitch that I grabbed a small piece of. I adjusted the fade so it fades in, and it fades from left to right. Very cool. Or right to left, rather. Okay, we have a few other things. Let's take a look at this vocal here. Labrats. And that I actually used a text-to-speech website for. I forget which one it was, but it created this really gnarly, bassy voice that said Labrats. Then I threw some bit reduction on it. Labrats. Labrats. I think bit reduction adds a lot of harsh, nice, crisp tone to your vocal. It's very destructive, though. You can get more crispness and more transparency out of something like Roth Air or OTT. So keep that in mind. Okay, so we have a ride cymbal, very standard stuff, just a ride sample doing a quarter note in certain parts of the track. Kind of took a note out of No Mana's book on this one. We introduced the ride like halfway through a phrase so it doesn't get boring. He used to do that a lot in his older music. Go. There's this bang sound, which is this guy. We have a Serum synth. It's a 7-voice saw wave with a cutoff automation envelope. Really simple stuff. No effects on this guy because we're doing everything externally. OTT, Valhalla Room. OTT adds that nice grunge in the mid-tone. It's over the top. It destroys the sound, and that's exactly what I was going for. And we have Faturator by Kilohertz, which is a really, really cool distortion plugin. I suggest you check it out. It's one of my favorites. A little bit of compressor to balance out the dynamics. And we have an EQ curve and a sidechain. There's a filter that we use for the beginning only, so we bring that bass in because we don't want to give it up until the drop, so we keep that pretty high passed. I don't know if you can even see that on the screen, but here actually I'll switch these. Just a high pass curve, and we remove it when we hit the drop. Cool. We have another metal sound here. I think it was just creating rhythm right before that drop, and we have a 808 snare, I believe. Yeah, building up. And those two together create this really nice rhythmic section. Really, really simple stuff, just a straight up 16th note rhythm with a pitch bend. Very, very rudimentary. And it's high passing as it goes. Okay, next up we have this big clap tone. No pun intended, clap tone. Great DJ. We have a clap. Again, it's just a sample with some high pass, some reverb, and a compressor. Then we have a reverse clap, which is a reverse version of the same clap. And it's going into that clap. So together it sounds like this. And it creates that really nice, like old school electro sounding clap. So this is I think a vocal chop. It's actually a synth one shot from Leviathan. I must have stretched it or something, create that grainy tone. It's going through an OTT with a generous amount of high and mid boost, and we have some reverb after it too. That's that cool like sound you hear every once in a while. Like, here we go. And it kind of introduces that hi-hat really nicely. It goes these three elements really work well together. And then it hits with that doom, which really accentuates that clap even. Okay, so we have a hi-hat group. Again, nothing special here. Here's a hi-hat sample doing an off eighth. We have two hi-hats, again, just adding some more energy with a second sample. These are more like housey open hi-hats than this one, which was more like a short techno hat. Then we have another open here. And the three of those together sound like this. We have the clap of the song, which is, again, just a sample. Actually, nothing on that. Wow, that's amazing. Some of my tracks, I just grab a good sample and go. Some of them, I'll really tweak the samples that I use. You can see my process for tweaking drums a little bit more in my Madeon remix that I did in the last video. You can check that out in the link above me right now, and you can check out that project as well. So we have this nice shuffled feeling hi-hat rhythm. It's just going up and down in velocity. A really neat trick that a lot of people don't know about that I can show you really quick is if you highlight several notes and you hold the Alt key, I'm sorry, not the Alt key, Command key or Control key on Windows, you can actually draw a vector to shape your velocities. So you can create these really nice ramping and de-ramping hi-hat rhythms like this very easily, because I can grab all of these and just draw in a single line, and it'll do it automatically instead of trying to drag every single one, which is very annoying. Okay, so that's the shuffled rhythm. Again, not much to it. Sounds good as is. There's a percussion bus here. It's creating a lot of the interest. Lots of different little glitch samples. This one's panned to the left. This one's panned to the right. Oh, I guess the sample's just right leaning. It's not panned. This one's a little bit, yeah. So I use these, and they're kind of just like all placed differently and in a very interesting sequence. Again, none of them are landing on the quarter notes because I'm trying to accentuate the groovy subdivisions more than I am the standard quarter notes, and that's what creates that really cool funky groove. Okay, we're finally into like the meat and potatoes of the song, which is this bass line here. Very simple bass again, not too much going on. So it is a saw wave with some unison on it. There is some macros that aren't doing anything. I actually used a preset and modified it for this bass. It's not too dissimilar to a bass that I would create anyway, though. Almost all my basses are a saw wave with a cutoff filter. So we have an envelope, very, very short release, doing a modulation on the low pass filter cutoff, and then we have some distortion after that. Removing all those highs and then bringing them up, create that really cool wobbly sound. And then that's pretty much it. There's this acid second oscillator here, and the two of those together sound really nice and beefy in the lows. We have a mid boost and a slight little high boost. We have a sidechain on the kick, or to the kick, and then we have a high pass curve for this beginning section. When it hits the drop again, we bring that bass back so it really smacks you in the face. Cool, and then we have this intro bass here. And we use this in this little breakdown. It's filtered, so it's not giving away too much information. It's high pass and low pass at the same time, so it's very, very, very minute, but it's a very similar sound to the previous one. Just two saw waves with a envelope controlling the cutoff. And that's largely every one of my sounds, really. It's either a saw or square wave as a basis with a filter modulating the cutoff. The small atmospheric sound here. Used to fill in the space in that breakdown. And there's some cool melodic elements in this here breakdown too. So just kind of wrote this as a secondary part of the song. I felt like it was getting redundant, so we needed something to really break it up. So at 2 minutes I introduced this new melodic idea. The saw wave, sine wave, up an octave with 7 unison. It's creating this really nice floating pad feel. Pretty simple chord progression. We're going E, G, and then D. And then it resolves to an E, which I think is actually the key of the song. Then we have this breakdown lead. It's a very, 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 very subtle kind of 8-bit tone. I'm running this saw wave through a downsample and through a +7 semitone boost, which is a perfect fifth if you're familiar with music theory at all. And we have a envelope controlling the cutoff of that filter. So we have this very nice kind of gritty 8-bit kind of tone to accentuate the main lead, which is this lead here, which is Reactor 6. I'm using, I forget what synth I used for this. This is older. It's Razor. I probably took a preset and heavily modified it. And you can take a look at the preset on the screen here. But largely, again, it's just a pulse width wave, which is essentially a square wave with some pulse width modulation and a low pass filter. Not dissimilar to all of the sounds in the song so far, just similar in a different synthesizer. So you can probably recreate this idea with your synth of choice as well. Okay, so I used that, and again, here's the melody. So the basis of the melody is this jumping between the G and the B. As you can see, it does this every bar, and on every whole note, it's going bam. And then occasionally we add this D to create some variance, but generally we're jumping back and forth between these two notes, rocking back and forth. As you see, it drops down to the F sharp in this bar here. But again, with that rhythmic symmetry idea, we're just repeating this symmetry, and it's making the melody very, very catchy. We have these little, I guess, ghost notes, for lack of a better word. I'm not the most savvy on music theory terminology, but I know a little bit. I would consider these ghost notes. So maybe accent notes. But we're using these little accents to, accentuate the main rhythm here, to create a little bit more interest. And we're doing this on the first two bars, as you can see, on this one, and then this one, and then this one. Because as you know, things reset after 8 bars, which ends right here. So these first two, it goes whole note, then this little accent, whole note, this little accent, whole note, whole note. And then we do the same thing here. Whole note, accent, whole note, accent, whole note. So same rhythm, and it's creating that rhythmic symmetry, and it makes it really interesting and cool for the listener. Processing on this, all we have is a little bit of delay at a 3 count, and that's pretty much the project file for Labrats. Really quick, let's take a look at the mastering. There's really not much. I have a limiter on it. That's it. And that's just an Ozone 8 doing a negative 4.6 decibel threshold on Ozone 8's maximizer. That's the Labrats project file. If you want to take a look at this for yourself, again, if you're a patron of the channel, you can go ahead and grab that at the link in the description below. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comment section below. If you liked the video, let me know as well. And if you did like it, give it a like. If you didn't give it a dislike, let me know what you disliked about it as well in the comment section below. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. This project has been really, really cool, and I hope you guys dig it as much as I do. I hope you enjoy Gradient and all the stuff we've been cranking out. And do us a favor and follow us on social media, so you can get updates on what's going on with the Gradient project. Don't even follow me, just follow Gradient. Oh yeah, thank you guys. Thank you to all my patrons. I think I'm going to start doing this at least on every video, a screen of all my patrons, so I'll do it right now. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. I couldn't do this without you, and I will talk to you in the next one. Go download that project file. Bye-bye.
This is not a drill.